Go live. Going live. Okay. Now we're officially live. Maybe, probably. Hello world.
Yep, it's there.
Okay. All right. It works. All right. I got to mute myself. All right. I've got to open in like 3 tabs. So I'm hearing myself like repeat myself several times. All right. So it's working. Cool. Welcome everybody for MergePHP, the first one of 2023, January here. Hope everybody had a good holiday year. And we've got a lot of exciting things planned for this year. And very glad that you could all make it. Definitely, we're glad that you're here in YouTube chat. We hope this is a little bit easier for everybody to join instead of the Zoom meetings. We've kind of switched over to having the organizers on Zoom, and then just general attendees on the YouTubes. So glad you could all make it, and we're going to go ahead and get started here. So we've got a lot to get through here. So I'm going to do the intro slides. Got it updated, fixed a few things. Thanks to the other organizer who worked on the slides. I did see that we did update it in a few places already, so appreciate the help. Yeah, so every month we give away a license to JetBrains, PHP Storm, or any other JetBrains product. If you're interested in participating, all you got to do is email Chris at atlantaphp.org, 604 Central. The first person to email Chris will win a license, and we might have a few extras to give away this month. JetBrains gave us some bonus licenses there, so definitely email Chris, and there's a good chance starting, or well, we'll see if we give them all away this year, right over this month, but we might have a few extra next month too, depending on what everyone decides. So there is information about Atlanta. Austin is me. And yeah, definitely, if you attended Longhorn PHP, check out longhornphp.com for our conference details. Really great last year, and looking forward to doing it again this year. And you can find some more information about us in these places. Boston PHP is run by Bobby and Gene. They've been around a long time, and I think our biggest group, biggest meetup group, part of MergePHP. Virtual self-study is run by Gene Babin, and they have 5 virtual self-study groups planned for 2023. So check out more information about that is on a website. I think Gene runs this website, webapprentices.org, and they should have the details there, but they usually post the details for the self-study groups in the Boston PHP meetup. So there's two different places there you can find more information about the self-study groups. Seattle PHP, that's Tim. Yep, and check him out on meetup there. Tim helps us out on the Twitters and the Mastodons. Runs a lot of our social media. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate the help, and we're working on a website project. It'll be done soon, TBD. And stay tuned for more information about that. I won't put you on the spot, but I'm looking forward to the new website.
Yeah, TBD is close to my initials, but not quite.
There you go. Yeah, you just need a new last name there. All right, PHP Vancouver. So thank you for joining us here from Vancouver. We're officially an international PHP user group, virtual group, thanks to Vancouver. It's run by James and Sean. PHP Vegas, or Vegas programmers on Meetup. That's run by Josh, OG programmer on the social medias. Check out his website, Remote Dev Force. He runs that company, and there can help you out if you need some devs. KC PHP is run by Eric. I think I saw Eric on there. Thanks for joining, Eric. And they do two events a month, or 3 events, and a presentation, a coffee shop, welcome everyone from Kansas City. Utah. Utah is Mark. Actually, he's Mark speaking tonight. It's run by Mark and Derek, and you can check them out there on Meetup. Most of us is on Meetup. I think a few of us have our own websites here. San Diego, I expanded their slide a bit. The only user group with a surfboard. You can find out more about San Diego PHP on their website, sdphp.org/about. And PHP Tech is coming up here soon. So feel free to use this discount code beta.is, beta is PHP Tech 23 for discounted prices on tech. And San Diego PHP is run by John and Eric. All right. So just as a friendly reminder, you should not be on PHP 7.4 or earlier. If you're running WordPress, I'm sorry, but this slide is updated, and helps to look at this, every now and then, be like, hey boss, I think it's time to upgrade. So just putting it out there. All right, upcoming conferences. So we got PHP UK in February, Confu in February. Tech, as I mentioned, the guys in San Diego are a part of that. And again, there is our discount. It's in May 16th to the 18th. Eric, I think I got the dates right. We got the dates right. Pretty sure.
Yes, sorry, I had to find my mute button. Those are the correct dates. Yeah.
PHP Day 2023 is actually in Italy, not Chicago. There are not 2 PHP conferences going head to head in the same city.
Our bad on that one. Thanks for the update on that, Ian. Yeah, so International PHP Conference is in May, probably. We assume these dates are correct. We already found one error. LairCon is in July, and Longhorn is in November. So there's your upcoming conferences and events. Oh, look at that. Changes on the fly. We're on top of it. Yeah, so at PHP Tech, I think is definitely the big one to check out there. Chicago's a fun city to visit for sure. So looking forward to that one.
Yeah, we're really excited to be bringing it back. It's been a lot of work, but we're enjoying it.
It take a little, COVID break, and then get back into the conference schedule. Yeah. All right. Oh, we still haven't decided if I guess we're still doing Twitter. We are on Mastodon. You can follow us on Twitter or Mastodon. Definitely subscribe to us on YouTube. You're watching us there on YouTube. Please subscribe. It helps out. Like and subscribe the typical YouTube things. And join us next month. Tankersley is speaking. Forget what the topic is, but we should have event announcements going out here soon-ish. The same sort of format as we're doing this month, assuming it's all working well for everybody. Chris will be speaking next month. And there's some more social information about us. A link to our social things. So tonight, thank you all for joining us again. Once again, we're going to jump into it here. And Mark, before I kind of do the general intro there, are you good to go?
Yep, I'm good to go.
Cool. All right. Yeah, Mark is going to be speaking tonight. And I guess I'll let you do your intro, and I'll leave this kind of up, and then you can swap over. But the talk tonight, I'm looking forward to Flysystem. I know that it's doing file systems in the cloud can be quite complicated, and anything that makes that easier is definitely a boon. So yeah. Mark, take it away.
All right, thank you, Logan. You can see my little blurb down there. I work at a cybersecurity company. We do vulnerability management, basically security scan analysis, and reporting on that. I have a couple of cybersecurity certifications, developing for a long time, co-organized Utah PHP user group. Let's see. Logan, I'll need you to stop your screen share, and then I will get mine going.
Sure. Yep.
Okay. Okay. If we can see that okay, looks good.
Yep.
Okay. Flysystem management with Flysystem, or file system management with Flysystem. The classic GIF from the GIF, if you will, depending on your flavor there, from the 90s, downloading the internet, as we have all enjoyed downloading files, moving files around, right? So here we have download the internet, you're going to get a memory error. But what presentation isn't complete without a good story at the beginning? This is my brother-in-law on one of our snowmobile trips. So I live in Utah, close to the mountains. We have a snowmobile trip coming up tomorrow, actually. So. But this was a scenario where we had a snowmobile go off trail due to a large tree that was attempted to be crossed. And the first day of trying to get it out by hand and lifting and pulling and stuff did not go terribly well. The snowmobile ended up being left on the mountain in the snow overnight, and I had to go up the next morning to rescue it. But this time, the next day when I keep one back up, I brought the right gear. I brought, you can see he's using what's called a come along. It's basically a hand winch, and it's a couple of car tow straps, with capacity of pulling, 10,000 pounds or whatever. We brought 3 of them up there, so we'd have enough distance, we'd have the right tools to be able to get this snowmobile back onto the trail. The belt was burned off too, and so we had a couple different problems going on all at the same time. But the snowmobile eventually made it home. Once we had the right tools, once we were able to pull it back up. Because when you're snowmobiling, one does not simply lift a snowmobile by hand. I am rewatching The Lord of the Rings, so this one came up and it was like, yes, that's a perfect meme to use. One does not simply lift a snowmobile. They're about 500 pounds. They're pretty heavy. And so when you've got to know how to use them correctly or how to move them correctly, because you can't just manhandle it. They're too hard to lift and struggle with. Which brings up a question: how do you effectively manage files with code? So it's kind of a moment to pause and think about your code base and think about how you manage files with code. Kind of at the core, PHP provides some built-in functionality. fopen, the classic one for opening, reading, writing, all that kind of stuff. File get contents and file put contents, using them in tandem to get and push and the files. delete and chmod and so on. These work. They can do the job for local file manipulation, but they only get you so far. So one does not simply write files to storage. In my experience, writing code with file management, if you try to do it yourself, it often ends up being very difficult to get it just right. There's always permission problems. There's managing the file's not there. There's different problems can pop up, and it just leads to issues. At least when I have tried to do it myself. So one does not simply write files to storage. There's always these hoops you have to jump through. There's always caveats. There's gotchas. There's exception handling that has to go on. Yeah, there's so many problems. For example, a problem I often run into is files that are too big. You get a file that's not the expected file size. It's too big. You end up having to stream it or chunk it or something else. So there's all these kind of different problems that can pop up. Classic problems with file management with PHP. In steps Flysystem, which is essentially that hand winch I was talking about with the snowmobiles. Flysystem is bringing the right tool for the right problem. It's going to be able to, in essence, be able to pull that snowmobile back up on the trail and get you going again. But in referring to file system management, to files and stuff. So Flysystem, it says on their website, on the page, is a file storage library for PHP. It provides a way to interact with many different types of file systems. When you use Flysystem, you're not only protected from vendor lock-in, you also have a consistent experience for whichever storage is right for you. You definitely have seen that. I have seen that. It's pretty prevalent where you want to avoid vendor lock-in and be able to write to one or many different file systems, whether that be local or in the cloud or wherever. Flysystem provides a one-stop shop to be able to do all those things. And we'll go into the nitty-gritties of it and some of the details behind it. The objective here, that you'll be able to walk away familiar with Flysystem and their API, feeling confident that you can go and implement it on your projects if you're not already. Get some ideas and start brainstorming how you're using it. Ideas and implementation. If you're already using it, we'll cover a couple strategies that may be helpful to use it better or use it in a more effective way, and be able to interact with it and use it for new things. So hopefully, even if you're familiar with it, you'll come out of here with something new to use or try out. We'll go over first external services, which cloud services are available. We'll step through the API, some of the most common methods that are available and used, the implementation strategies, and also get into a little bit of unit testing because I love testing. And Flysystem makes that amazing compared to rolling your own. All right, external services. So traditionally you have code and you have different code for writing locally versus externally. You might have a different file, or it may just be like a large class or whatever, and you have this different code that's writing locally or externally. You're having to do it many times, or you have it abstracted out a little bit to help improve that. But often there's different code going on for writing locally versus externally. You're not able to have a single service do all that for you. It's often distributed or broken out or whatever. The kind of what we'll call the traditional or more like the legacy way of using it, PHP. For example, a use case, you might get a user story to work on. And it's being able to deliver a report, let's say. There's story, basically, to be able to test it locally in development, you're probably going to have to write it to a local storage, to a local file system. It ends up with the QA team, and they need to be able to test that. It needs to go somewhere external, maybe an SFTP or wherever, so they can test it and actually be able to see it, see where the file is at, and see it being delivered. But then you get to production as people are using it and they're happy with it. But then they're like, okay, well, we want to be able to use maybe Amazon S3 storage for it. They want to be able to scale it and be able to access it online. And so then you have this scenario where you have different environments are doing different things. Stored files are being stored different places. Files need to be delivered to certain places. You need to maybe pull files down locally or do things on the server. And so you have these different copies and pastes and moves and different interactions going on. Kind of a pretty classic scenario or use case there. You may end up with code that looks kind of pseudocode here, looks something like this. If you have a read local, a read S3, they're each going to do their own kind of thing. And you have like a get contents, and you're just kind of like a match or something like that, where you're or you have a factory or something that's going on where you're just going to be grabbing, you're going to be calling different functionality to go do what it needs to do. Just kind of give an example of what it might look like without actually implementing a lot of the code here, just very simple what it might look like. This is where Flysystem is very configurable. I love it. And allows for both local and external services. And we'll go into what those options look like. They have some official adapters. You can also write your own or see if you can find others, but I found that the ones that I do support are sufficient. Local, you have local storage, so writing to local directories or local mount. And they also have in memory. So if you don't need to actually write it, but it needs to be in memory, they have both options available. And then for external, there's AWS S3, as I mentioned, async AWS S3, you have Azure, you have Google Cloud, SFTP, the web dev protocol. So a handful of different options there. They also have GitLab as a community adapter, which you can use to store files and things up there as well. So a lot of your options, a lot of the items are already out of the box, ready to go, ready to be used. So now stepping through into their API a bit more. They have pretty decent documentation. It's all available online. I do find it's a little hard to figure out some of the configurations for it. I often end up stepping into the code and looking at how things interact. But you can get the general gist of things online on the docs. It's important to note that make sure you're on the correct version of the documentation. Like many frameworks or projects, they have multiple different versions, and so just make sure you're on the current version or whichever version you're using, so that you can find the documentation that you are looking for. Otherwise, you may run into problems where you're not able to find it. It is out there. Just make sure you're on the right one. Very basic. There's a file exists, right? So if you're in regular PHP land, you do a file exists check. They do have just a file exists. They have a directory exist if you want to check the existence of a directory, or you can just use the has. You can say, your local Flysystem adapter and see if it has a specific file or directory path, and it'll return, tell you if it's there or not, if it's present. So super handy to use. They have basic file CRUD, write, read, move, and delete is what I'll be referring to those as. So they have write and write stream. Write stream, of course, you're just going to be streaming the contents instead of doing it once, but you have the write there. They have a read and read stream as well. Super helpful for larger files, or if you need to stream it for some other reasons. They have a delete, of course, just to delete the file. You can create directories and list the contents and get some metadata about it. Files, you can move them, you can copy them. Metadata will give you last time is modified, the file size, the MIME type, which is super helpful for many things, especially for MIME type checking. If a file comes in, it's downloaded or uploaded from a user, you check the MIME type. It's an easy way to do this, or file size. And they've got the checksum on there, so you can verify integrity of the file contents. You can set permissions on it as well. I mentioned before, often when you're dealing with files, there's a problem with permissions, and so the Flysystem API provides a way to be able to set the visibility and to get the current visibility to give you information about what it is. And so you can know if you need to do anything different or if you need to change anything or set different permissions. URLs. So if you need to get a public or temporary URL and the file exists on one of these services, external services, you can use that to generate the URL. So you don't have to go generate all the hashes and all that kind of fun stuff. You can go do that for you. Save you some legwork there. Frameworks, it comes bundled already with Laravel. It's available with Symfony, and you can use it with other frameworks. I've used it pretty extensively with the older Zen framework and the newer Laminus. It's been pretty smooth there as well. So I can attest that it is pretty easy to plug in and use. Available via Composer, of course. You go and require it and start using it. And you can grab whatever external service APIs you want to use as well, and roll with those. Implementation strategies. We're going to go into a few of these, give you some kind of a bigger idea of what is out there and what is available. There's a wrapper service strategy, a mount manager, and configuration driven, different ideas or concepts to consider when you start architecting, or if you already have it, things you can do to improve your current implementation. A wrapper service. So at the very beginning, I talked about Filesystem. I mentioned that it's a good tool to avoid vendor lock-in. Using a wrapper service, as I'm referring to it, is a good way to abstract out that logic and make it so that it's vendor agnostic. You're also able to, in theory, if for some reason you needed to use something besides Flysystem, you could also flip that out. But within Flysystem, you can then use it for all the different external packages. And the best of all, it's unit testable, and you only have to write one test to test all the things, which is amazing. It's my favorite. When you have testable code, it pushes you towards good techniques and good strategies, such as single purpose classes and other solid principles. That might look something like this. Where you have file storage service, and it has a Flysystem class sent in on the constructor, and it can read. So now instead of having to go and do a fopen or a connect to your S3 storage or connect to your Google Cloud or connect to GitLab or whatever you're doing, it can now read based on location, no matter which storage system it resides in. So it's very helpful for streamlining that code. The simple read function now just takes one line instead of maybe a couple dozen there. So coming up to the configurable Flysystem, you can inject the configuration for the adapters. So for example, if you have a local, some sort of configuration for Filesystem, you can say local directory, and it defaults to temp Filesystem files. Or if it's AWS, you can say client, and here's the credentials. We have a key and a secret and a region and a version and a bucket. These can be then used with your DevOps team if they need to be able to configure it, or however else you're rolling with that to make it configurable. Maybe it's database driven tables or whatever. But now you can make it so that the code works based on configuration settings. The mount manager is a way that kind of brings everything back together and makes it so that you can jump between different file systems. So the scenario here is you have many customers, and going back to the report delivery example I was detailing earlier, they each might have different file storage locations. So maybe you have, your big customer is using SFTP, and another one's using, as mentioned, Google Cloud, or another one's using S3 storage, or whatever. And so now you have all these different customers that are wanting files to be delivered or or they're putting files there for you to go read, or however you're using that. And now you can use the mount manager to be able to do that in one spot by making it, it can be configurable to manage all that. So for example, if you write the file locally and then you're going to move it off elsewhere, you can use the mount manager to do that all in one go. So it interacts with files with many services, and you simply the address or location, you say you preface it with whatever you have called it, so local or AWS S3, and then pass it along. So you might end up with a file manager that has a mount manager, and it can now read from the location, and it's going to be able to read from those that are set up, and then it can go and maybe write to another location as needed. That brings up a factory pattern. You can go and maybe create a mount. It can go through all the different storage locations they need to be interacting with, and it can go and create these different storage locations based on configuration. And then based on that, you can go and use your, from the previous slide, the file manager. But taking a little bit further, you can take the file storage adapter factory and go and build it out so you have the different things. So this isn't like flawless code. It's to give an idea of what you can do with the mount manager, to be able to push files, pull files, manage files, whatever you need to be doing there with Flysystem. So getting into the testing section, historically, it's been, in my experience, it's always been problematic to try to test with local file interactions, or if you're pushing a code or whatever, especially when it's tightly coupled, or when you're actually having to use live actual files or whatever. Often there ends up being, like, for example, test files, or you're writing off to the temp directory. There's injecting file content, which may or may not be a bad thing. You'll see like a get ignore, for to ignore the directory where testing files are moving around, so we don't copy and send them along in the repository, or just completely skipping the tests for that area of the code. It might not have very good code coverage from the reports. There's also kind of a question of integration tests versus unit tests that comes up as well. So these are all kind of the historical problems that can come up with testing that may or may not cause problems. So the old way, we'll call it, is an example of what maybe how we used to test it, or how maybe it's currently being tested before using Flysystem. You have a testing file.txt, and its contents are test file contents 1, 2, 3. And you read it, and then you assert the contents based on you already have in that file. And so it relies on, while you're trying to write a unit test, it's also technically an integration test, because it's reaching out to something external. It's reading a file, opening resource, whatever. Flysystem abstracts that layer out. And because of that, you can actually use mocks and mock objects for your tests. You can mock the file interactions without having to go and test that files are moving. You can trust that the Flysystem is going to be moving the files correctly. It has its own series of tests and whatnot. It does push, again, as I mentioned, for single purpose code and for centralized file system management within your code architecture. So then you're not going to have to go write tests all over the place. It's all centralized, and the fewer the tests, the less the code, the better. Easier to manage, easier to update, easier to bug fix, easier to add features to. So for example, now your test may look something more like this. You have a Git mock builder where it's going in and building the mock. It's disabling the original constructor. It has the only methods, it's only going to read, and we're going to get the mock, and we're going to say that the read method will get the test path, and it will return some sort of text. And then we'll call the file storage service, and it's going to read it, and we're going to assert that the contents are the same. So this way, we've now bypassed having to have a local, actual, true test file. We are mocking that if we call a read, it's going to read the file, and we're going to get the contents back. So now we actually have a true unit test instead of an integration test. If your goal is to get unit tests instead of not just an integration test. So it provides a very good way to jump into unit testing and actually have good valid unit tests for it. Kind of some discussion items or questions or comments that often come up, especially with implementation. There's a benefits. What are the benefits of Flysystem? I think I've hit on a bunch of those. From just the usability and code architecture, it can certainly clean things up and make that easier to use. But there's also the cons, though, and some of the questions some of the discussions that come up here will be kind of going into some of the cons. There is a conversion cost, absolutely. If you already have something else, migrating over to Flysystem, there's going to be some ramping up for that. There's going to be some refactoring. There's going to be some rework in your code. I'd make the argument that it's definitely worth the while. It's worth the investment time to be able to use a modern application or modern and supported platform or project for that. Scalability is a big question that comes up. I found it to be very scalable. I used it on very large files and many files. And it's been a really good workhorse for me and projects that I've worked on. And there's some maintenance, it has version updates. And you have to go and like any other project, it is actively being worked on and actively being improved. And so there is a little bit of maintenance cost associated with using it. I would say it's pretty minimal, though. There hasn't really been backwards breaking issues that have popped up, but there's certainly been new features added. For example, the mount manager was not in the original incarnation of Flysystem. It was something that was added later on, and so it's new features like that get added in that are very helpful and very beneficial for the use. So kind of a quick summary. We've gone over the external services. Be thinking about maybe services that you are using and what you have. We've gone over the API. Again, we've hit kind of the high level. We haven't gone super deep into them. We've definitely covered what its capabilities are and what you can use it for. Some implementation strategies, including using like a files management service and mount manager, and some testing considerations, testing strategies for interactions with files. It's like with any external service you're using. For example, I think of like emails as a classic one, or SMS sending. You're going to want to write a centralized place in your code to do that, not everywhere. And this is kind of the same thing with Filesystem. There's been a general move within the PHP core to move away from resources in general. And so this is also a good way to help get yourself set up as more and more of those are moved over, including file interactions, which are historically resources instead of objects when you're interacting with them in the code. With that, though, we can move over to any questions that are in the YouTube section. And I don't know if Logan, is there something I change back to you for that?
Yep. No questions. But let's give it a minute here. If anybody has any questions for Mark, definitely give him a shout out in YouTube. I guess I have a few questions. So how well does this is Flysystem suited for kind of backgrounding jobs and kind of running uploads in the background, or like, do you typically, does it work nicely with JavaScript if you have like a JavaScript uploader? What are some like pro cons to kind of like doing it in, JavaScript land versus in PHP land?
Yeah, those are good questions. I've used it with the messaging in the back, so with RabbitMQ and with Symphony Messenger, and that's worked really well. It's been a good technique to use to queue up maybe a file upload or report generation, then allowing the backend to go and do that with Flysystem. That's been work. I've also used it with to handle the uploads from from form on the front end. And that's been pretty smooth as well. So everything I've done with it I've been surprised with how well it's worked. It's also really helped with simplifying. I've run into some pretty complex issues with. I've had, as this may have been obvious in the presentation, I've used it heavily with AWS S3 storage, including some pretty complex permission setups with roles and having to assume roles and whatnot. And it's been able to handle that pretty easily. Whereas in the code, it was, the other way of trying to figure out myself was very complex and many steps and hoops. But using the supported Flysystem code, made it so much easier to use. So it's been really, really, to me, I've been very pleased with the implementation for it, both back end and on front end submissions.
Awesome. I guess the other question or thought that comes to mind is security. So, typically when you're doing file uploads, common thing that, programmers would do is check the file extension, right? Like, does the file extension, you have a allow list of file extensions. Does it do anything beyond that in terms of like checking the headers of files and kind of getting into some more advanced ways to verifying that the PDF is really a PDF kind of scenario?
Yeah, I've used it for the MIME type checking. Used the file metadata for that, and used it to check kind of the initial contents too, where I've been things just be a little suspicious of files. But I haven't used it beyond that for checking those. There is a checksum on it, if we need to check for file manipulation or if it's been modified. But beyond that, no, I haven't used it for other security checks.
Well, good to know. What's included? I mean, maybe it's part of Flysystem, but I figure I would ask. Security is always a concern for file uploads. Do you have any other questions? Let's see here. Looks like you answered all of them. So does anybody know? So we're on Laravel 9 or 10 now, and then I saw Flysystem is on version 3 now. I was like, I wonder what version of Flysystem like the latest Laravel and Symfony are using. I was trying to figure that out like while you're talking, and I didn't get that far.
The latest Laravel is 9, but I don't know what version of Flysystem it's using. I know Laravel 10 is coming out next month.
So that might be a 3.0 Flysystem if yeah. So if Laravel 9 came out a year or 2 years ago, so it's probably using 2. Yeah,
Came out a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so my experience has been, I'm primarily a Laminas developer, and it has been super easy to plug it in. I assume it's going to be the same for CodeIgnite or anything else you might be using. I've used Symfony components as well, and I've been able to plug it in with that. It's because it has a package for it, so it's pretty easy to use it with that.
I did discover that it's the most starred project for PHP League on GitHub. The most popular project there for PHP league. So
Yeah.
some little bit of trivia for everyone.
Pretty popular then. That's good.
Yeah.
So I, at least in my Composer JSON, which it's relatively up to date, Laravel is using 3.0.16 or higher.
Oh, cool.
It's pretty current. That's
Well,
good.
thanks for checking that, Derek.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? A little bit about me. Master's degree in information systems. Yeah, security scans. Love to be outdoors. If you ever run to me at a conference, come talk with me about anything outdoors. Love being outside, hiking, fishing, camping, snowmobiling, running, triathlons, whatever. But yeah, we can keep nerding out and talking about Flysystem too. So it's kind of a quick the last little bit there, some references.
We did get a question come in from Aaron here. He says, I'm curious about the method for deleting non-empty directories.
I'm not sure on that one. I haven't had to delete entire directories, so I haven't tinkered with that one. I definitely have deleted individual files, but I haven't tried it with deleting entire directories.
Deleting stuff from S3 is always fun. It's like, it runs a command every like 10 seconds or something. Seems like it takes a while.
Yeah, with S3, I've used like retention policies to automatically delete files after a certain period of time. So I've used the S3 administration instead of using Flysystem to go delete those after, directories and stuff later.
Cool. Well, hopefully we'll get some new adapters. There's probably a few missing. What's the one like? Cloudflare has one now. R2, R something, R5. I don't know.
The nice thing about a lot of these newer object stores is they all are like, screw it, everybody uses S3, so everything conforms to the S3 interface. So like Cloudflare's does, the newer, well, Backblaze B2 has a S3 compatible interface to it, and the list goes on. So it's like, just put in the correct host name, it'll work.
No, it's good.
It's good that we standardize on one thing.
Yeah, it just happens to be a kind of janky API, but it's effectively a de facto standard. So, whatever.
For better or worse, that's the one we settled on.
Yep.
Yeah, it does have the web dev protocol as well, so anything that's using that as well is capable of looking into it.
The DAV.
Yeah, web DAV.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I
cool.
have. Logan, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the talk, Mark. I really appreciate it. Your first MergePHP talk, it went well, so good job.
Thank you. It's a preview for PHP UK. I've got to polish it up a little bit, and so I welcome any feedback on it to clean it up and do better. And I'll also be at PHP Tech with it. So.
Oh yeah, do you want to put up your contact info again? Just if anybody has any feedback for Mark, you can hit him up. I think you shared your email address or something.
I don't think I have it on there. Oh, I do.
No.
Twitter and
the Twitter.
Same. You can find me on Mastodon or Twitter there at MB Niebergall. Also, come find me if you're at the PHP UK or PHP Tech. I will have stickers for the Utah PHP user group.
Awesome.
Good new sticker for your laptop.
That's always appreciated. I love Utah mountains. I like this. Good job on the sticker there.
Yeah, I didn't design it, so I can't take credit for it, but Yeah, it's a good logo.
All right. Well, I think that's it. We're not going to do so. Last year, we did kind of bring everybody up, and but since with the YouTube stream situation, there's no audience to bring up, so it's just us, the organizers. But glad you all could join us for MergePHP January 2023. We'll have an announcement out here soon for February. And we've got a lot of exciting things planned. We will get our website done soonish. So stay tuned for more about that. But I think that'll make it easier on everybody for having one central place to RSVP to stuff. Obviously you should, if you subscribe and ding the bell, you should get a notification in the YouTube app as well. So, making it easy on everybody as much as possible, kind of streamlining everything. That is our goal. So yeah, thank you once again, and hope you have a good rest of your January. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, everybody, for attending and for your input and questions.